Dad on Facebook Live. Welcome. And today I want to say a big welcome to Dr. Chris. And we have a special guest, a long-standing friend of mine, Paul Wakely, who's we're going to put on the spot and ask him all the questions that we want to know about your dad. And just to say, if you're watching on Facebook Live, you can let us send some questions up and we'll do our best to respond to them. You can message us on YouTube as well by typing into the live comment. And so here we go. So, Paul, I'm just going to ask you a few questions about yourself. Hi, Pete Naylor. Good to have you. I'm just going to ask you a few questions about yourself so that you can so people can get to know you a bit. So where do you currently live, Paul?
Okay, hi. Thanks for letting me come on your show. We currently live just south of Bath, in a little village that none of you have heard of called Timsbury. And it's a lovely village. It's in the rural area. We have sheep in the back garden.
Nice. Hi, Kev. And so, Paul, you've been a dad for a while. Just tell us a little bit about your family and your children, if you would.
Sure. Thanks, Paul. So I've been a dad for 40 years.
Wow.
We have 4 sons, 1 daughter. The eldest son is 40, and and 2 of them are married, and we have 7 grandchildren, and
wow.
2 of them have got special needs, which has added to the challenges and joys of being a dad massively. So one of them has got Down syndrome, and then one of them has got a condition called spina bifida with hydrocephalus. So that's all part of the mix. We have a single parent with a son, so it's a real mixed bag in my family.
Wow. Cool. So when you started out having children, did you think you had lots of good ideas and great solutions to being a parent? And how long did they last?
I was mega keen. I thought, yeah, I know how to do this. It was interesting because I'm sure you've referred to this, but I never really knew my dad and had a role model. I didn't really have a role model in him that I could remember, that I could sometimes refer back to, that some of us can or want to. And in a funny way, I hadn't been fathered myself, so it was a big learning curve. And I had lots of enthusiastic ideas. I think one thing I knew even then, I knew that I really wanted to love my kids. I don't know. I really did want to love them like it was totally unconditional. I don't think I managed it, but I knew from the beginning I wanted to really treasure them and love them. Probably partly because I hadn't experienced that, made me want to give it away as best I could. But it was a very untrained journey.
Wow. So you were literally driving somewhere with no roadmap. So did you have like role models around you who you admired? And
yeah, there were, Paul. There were a number of guys. We were in a church community, and actually along the way, even before then, I'd come across men who I just felt were so fatherly that I could at least watch them and think, what is it that makes them fatherly? What is it that makes me want to be closer to them? And so I picked up some things, and certainly some of the fathers in our community were brilliant dads that I could. I'd lived with a family before I got married, and they had 3 kids, and 4 actually. And watching them, mother and father, made a huge impact upon me when I really hadn't had family before that. So there were role models around that helped me realize what a huge deal it was to be a dad. At least I realized this is massive. This is like a whole journey, and we're in. You can't go back on it.
Yeah, it's
First
like
one comes out.
Getting married is a drama, or it's like a big thing, isn't it? It seems monumental. And then you realize actually that's relatively small potatoes compared to starting a family together.
when you hold that little baby in your arms and you're all kind of overwhelmed and tearful and so on, you have no idea that this is a human being you're now entrusted to, see through, and always will be, and then the next one. So yeah, it was a huge joy, but it was just it did flummox me because I didn't really know how to do it.
Yeah.
And probably with the first one was over enthusiastic about a number of things that later on I tempered and tried to get a little bit more measured than I had done the first one. First one always cops you. First one always has to catch all your lessons while you're trying to learn them,
Yeah, that's pretty much what you said, wasn't it, Chris, about being a bit overzealous on discipline and
yeah, that was me.
Yeah, I think the teaching in the evangelical church was really spare the rod, spoil the child in those days.
Yeah.
And I think culturally it was a fairly harsh, well, not exactly harsh, but we would see the issues differently these days.
Yeah, me too. That would be me. It's interesting, Paul. We all our kids grown up now. We've often reviewed with them openly. Hey, how did we do?
Yeah,
Which is always a risky question because, of course, you're going to get anything back very honestly, and you better be ready for it. But on the other hand, we thought it was important to review how did we do, and it was really sweet. But one of the things they said to us, which really hit me, was, you know what, we wish there'd been more spontaneity and ease in the home of not being programmed quite so strongly. And it wasn't that we were super organized, it's just there was always so much going on. They longed to be more spontaneous and flexible, and I thought it was an interesting one that they would have valued that more. Just the ease of saying, hey, come on, let's just suddenly do this, rather than, hey, we've got to get to bed now, and next thing.
Yeah.
They really fed that back.
That's interesting. Have you had a similar, hey Pete, good to have you. Have you had a similar conversation with any of your children, Chris, where you've sort of like said, run the reel back, how did we do?
Not quite so formally, no, but in conversation things have come up. And yeah, we had to negotiate some very tough things like the death of a second child. We unpicked all of that with them. And some of the, you don't necessarily know at the time what's happening. And talking to them later, you find out that they're still processing it. And I think...
Could you talk more about that, Chris, about how, I mean, it's a massive subject to sort of touch on, but as you brought it up, is there something that you feel that you could share a bit about your experiences? Because, I mean, that must be the most devastating thing any dad will ever do, is to bury their own child, particularly when they're small. And I was there.
We survived that, and we did our best. But I think we were not fully functional for quite a long time afterwards, and we didn't really realise how massive an impact. I mean, you assume your children are sad and impacted. We talked about it, but we later discovered that our eldest daughter had been having counselling for a couple of years via her school. And at the time, we were so nearly not focusing ourselves. We didn't really have much left.
Yeah.
You're just devastated. The fact that there's food on the table and clean clothes and stuff like that is about all you can really guarantee. So I think the kids they missed out on some stuff. Then we've unpicked out with them.
Yeah. Has that been an issue for you, Paul, where you've had to show leadership when, in your family and maybe at work, when actually inwardly you're just crying out in pain, because of something that's hurt you or disappointed you or broken yours?
Yeah. How long you got? Yeah, I think it has, and I think it's a really good question. I think one of the things I realized, that being a dad, and I don't mean this to sound I don't know, sort of heroic in some way, being a dad, you really do have to draw out of the bag leadership when you know, everything with you wants to say, but what about me? And what about, you know, my crime? What about my needs? But there's others, whether family or other communities, where if you're leading, I realize it's not you want to stuff your own needs down, but you have to draw something out of the bad for their sakes.
Yeah.
That I think is about fathering, because in a funny way, being a dad is almost the death of your own right to kind of, well, what about me?
Yeah.
Not that there isn't the need to process. Absolutely, as you know, guys and men particularly need to learn how to process how they're feeling and what's going on. I mean, that's a huge deal. But I think when you're leading and fathering, you know, there were so many times in our family, like when our youngest was born with, you know, pretty horrendous condition with a spina bifida, and it was about 6 months crisis for the whole family because it was such a huge deal medically and operations. And for 6 months, I just had to push aside my own cry of, hey, I haven't even got my wife with me. She's in hospital. And what about me? And I'm trying to take care of. And I had to every morning set myself to father and lead them because they were the ones that needed it.
Yeah.
And again, I don't mean that in a heroic way. I just believe fathering and leadership to some degree is you know, that has to come at another point. But at the time, I had to just take care of the family and the whole situation medically, and we've had a whole bunch of those things along the way, where, especially in terms of leadership in a church, where I think that going horribly wrong made me really distressed and broken inside. But I realized I still needed to gather my family and shepherd them through it and help them through it, even though I was the one that felt, hey, I've had it, you know, I've been completely pulverized, run over, but I got a family. And if I dip out then and go in, which I've seen men do, go into sort of, you know, a gloom of withdrawal because they're so hurting inside, and I understand it. But I think the commitment to your wife and your children or whoever you're leading is, at the worst of times, you still kind of got this need and grace to shepherd them through, while having some stop off to pay attention to your own soul or emotions, whatever, along the way.
Thank you, my darling. My beautiful daughter has just brought me some coffee. What a treat. Pete Milner, I see you're here. Great to have you, Pete. Last week you said a really profound thing, and you said that you realized that the way you begin the day with your family. Hi, Emma. The way you begin the day with your family really sets the whole mood for the family almost. And I thought that's profoundly true. Certainly in my experience, and I've had to realize that if I noticed with Josh, when I was just a little bit short and curt with him in a response, rather than being generous and giving him time, and I was just sort of kind of just, you know, a little bit irritable, that would kind of grow like an exponential curve, and little Josh, with all of his own stuff going on, would brew that up, and it would be, before long, it would be bursting out in some, you know, kind of cranky behavior towards his sister or mum or something. And I realized, you know what, I sowed that seed. This I'm responsible. That's my crime. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't
it? One of the things I'm learning right now, if we're going to be honest, is that with our youngest, who's waylaid on bed rest for months with quite a serious medical challenge, and he's a young adult. But it reminds me again and again that when he's really short with me, or even volcanic, if I reply in kind and can't draw out of the father mode something bigger and better, we're just on a kind of a war of who's going to win this. You know, this, you were wrong to do that, and I'm right to be like this, and all of that stuff. And I have to wind down and say, something's hurting, and I need to find out what that is.
Yeah.
I'm sounding like I don't always manage it, but I've learned so many years to sit down and say, okay, hey, what's going on? And if I can't cope at that moment, I just step out of the door to sort of wind down from that level of heat, because that's what a dad does, isn't it? A dad doesn't meet it head on in a kind of a, right, I'm going to show you who's boss around here. But I think so many times when I've sat down and said what you're really feeling, and then what he shared, I thought, oh my goodness, I get it. But I needed to sit down and say, what's happening? You know, what's going on? And right now, I mean, and every time that happens, we close the gap. We're close. I can be a dad to him. I can help him in it. But if I go on the sort of, how dare you?
Yeah.
I'm going to show you, you know, young or old, I think that applies to all of us, isn't it? You know, the fathering thing is the one person who can make me feel safe enough to say, this is what's really going on. And they look at you like they believe in you and love you and they're with you in it. And that is huge anchor, isn't it?
So true. Chris, I'll just bring you in a second. I think that, would you agree that, Paul, that even though we have like a positional authority and responsibility, if you like, and, you know, it's our job, and sometimes I say, listen, this is my job. God gave me this job, that I'm just doing what a dad has to do, okay? And someone's got to say no, and it's me. Yeah. And I don't want to, you know, I don't want to make you unhappy, but I'm prepared to if that's what it takes. But there's that sort of, it's kind of also a privilege that is conferred on us.
Yes.
To have that authority to say no, and for them to come with us, perhaps when we actually said that's not going to happen. But it's like they've bought into our kind of us as a person, I guess.
Yeah, because sometimes with this particular situation, if he does something, I won't go into, but if he does something that's quite damaging to another member of our family, now he's crossed the boundary. And I'm not going to be first saying how you're feeling. I'm going to be saying, look, you and I both know you can't cross that boundary, because it's now about the family, and this is how we do family here. This is our culture, and you're crossing it. And then and until he goes back from that line, only then can I say, hey, what's going on for you? So it is a, you know, you're right.
Chris, you were about to say something, I think, and
I was just agreeing.
Yeah. So really what we're saying is that do you think that there's like a particular resource that God gives to dads? I mean, we're all, I think probably most of us here are watching, are from a church background, Christian background, but would you say that there's like a almost like a source of kind of special help that God can make available to dads in these kind of situations?
I would have to say, for my, Chris, I don't want to jump in all the time. I'd have to say absolutely, because if I think I can do it in my own little self, especially with some of my own damage that that sometimes I haven't been the best kind of person to do it anyway, especially not having been fathered. It was a long journey, but so I'd have to say, well, I'd like to say about everything to do with trying to do life is absolutely, I do believe God gives a grace, if you want to put it, an enabling hand of God on us that actually allows us to be that sort of dad, because he passionately cares about our kids and our grandkids. And so I think he does keep his hand on us. And for me, a lot of it's about being actually able to say to God, God, I don't know how to do this. Would you help me?
100%.
Would you help me? I've done that more in the last 20 years than the first 20 years, because I've realized I was never intended to father on my own. I could only father really to the degree that I let him father me, and then the whole flow would happen beautifully. But as long as I was dipping into my little own pot and saying, I can do it,
I've got this.
It was my best shot against their best shot. And I think I absolutely believe God backs dads more than we realize, because he so wants us to feel good about it, but also for our kids and grandkids to actually go way further than we have done.
That's cool. Maybe Forty, if you could put up Chris's Pete's comment, because that's a really good comment there. Both of my kids react dreadfully to what I consider quite mild outbursts. Very interesting. Taking up your cross, which is something Jesus said, wasn't it? Means losing your rights. So we have to make sure our wives and kids see our gratitude and celebrations when they bless us. Also, we have to risk being unpopular sometimes by exercising leadership.
Yeah.
That's true. Chris.
Yeah, the buck stops here, really, doesn't it? Somebody has to be the grown up, and somebody has to decide what the line is, and then take the consequences.
Yeah.
I think it's always a question of balance, isn't it? As Paul was implying. If you focus on the rules the whole time, you have a harsh framework. But if you're too soft, if you negotiate too much, then you have no framework at all.
Yeah. Have you ever found, or does it tend to be your wife, that one of you will almost have like this unerring instinct for the truth? And even if there's something that needs to be owned up to by one of the younger children, and they don't know how you found out, but it's almost like God just let you in on the secret somehow. Is that just been in our house, or has that been in you guys' house?
Yes, very much so. My wife is particularly good at that.
Yeah. I think my wife shares that skill.
Yeah.
I think
Sorry,
there's a number of times I've been galloping along as a dad thinking, well, I think I've got this sussed, and then chatting with Sue, which then needs me to sit down properly and hear her rather than show her I'm right. It's just been like, what are you really feeling? And then she says something, and I think, oh my goodness, that's the real issue. Or that's the perspective I needed, but I was galloping along a bit. Again, it's been a huge counsel to me.
Yeah.
Can I just drop something else in, Paul?
Go for it.
We're talking about knowing what's going on in the hearts of our kids. Again, this isn't about being soft, but I realize how profound it is as a dad to listen well to our kids and listen well.
Yeah.
And listen well and listen to really what they're wanting to say.
Yeah.
And if we don't, I think it's a funny thing where, I don't know, I think as a dad, and obviously for mums, but as a dad, to draw out that what's going on in this allows us then to father much better, because we have a much better understanding of what's going on. And I picked up the phone to my granddaughter today, who's 13, and this is, in one sense, it's the same issue. And she said to me, I didn't know what we were going to talk about today, because we talked 2 weeks ago. Yeah, she's in another country. She then proceeded to talk for a whole hour about some of the deepest things that I could imagine she'd talk about.
Wow.
I was just thinking, you know what? I just listening.
Yeah.
I didn't do anything. But at the end, she said, I can't believe how much I've shared with you, because I felt you were really listening to me. Now, please, I'm not singing my song. I'm just saying it reminded me again that the time taken to really listen and listen well pays dividends in not a short listen or a quick assumption or a, whatever else.
Yeah.
We can't always do it. I get it. Busy family, busy home. But there's something about a dad looking someone in the eye, really looking in the eye, giving all the attention to them, saying, tell me, talk to me about it, And I don't know. I think it anchors them in some way where they really feel heard.
Yeah.
Believed in, held, safe, breathing, kind of, you really are interested in me, aren't you? You really do care. You really do believe in me. I don't know anybody else but a dad who has that particular power to sink into a daughter or son, a sense of being so valued that you're prepared to really listen to them well.
Oh. No, I was going to say, you've always been a tremendous listener whenever we've sat and drunk coffee and stuff. And I always feel like you have got like a PhD level listening skill. And I
don't
just
tell my wife you said that. Sorry.
No, she'll probably. But just give us a few simple, like ideas about how you can, because surely you can become better at anything if you practice, and I'm convinced that we can become better listeners than we perhaps instinctively or naturally are to this point. But are there some things that we could learn from a pro?
Please leave that last word out, because what did you say? I wasn't listening. Sorry. Sorry. Stop it. Okay. I mean, let's talk about it together, because we're all on a journey, aren't we? There's some very simple things, but I talk to all sorts of people, and sometimes I'm talking to them, they're looking over my shoulder like they're actually thinking about something else.
So do you move your head to fill the gap?
Or they're hoping I'll move on so they can talk to. I mean, I think
Lennis.
The obvious things that, just looking at them with your eyes, like genuinely you mean it, and the facial. I know it sounds odd, but even your face. Are you looking like you really enjoy them and you want to hear, or is this just your duty before you go and get your beer?
Yeah.
And I think the facial, the eyes, the whole way you're engaging with them, and actually, I guess, I know this sounds strange, but do you really care even? Because sometimes kids could be boring or a bit wondery, or but do you really care enough to stick with the story and go with it? And so I love, and you have to love your kid, don't you? So I don't really care what you want to talk about. I really, really like you as you are. I really enjoy you.
Yeah.
And I want to hear. So sorry, that's long-winded. I guess it's that. Then it is that staying with the story, staying with them. And I often say something like, "So how did that make you feel?"
Yeah.
Halfway, along the way, crumbs. So that happened. So what did that do to you?
Yeah.
Not as a rote question, but I'm genuinely saying, hey, what happened there then? When they, when you weren't allowed to join in with that bunch of friends because they kicked you, what happened? So that, I guess it's drawing out the real part that they're wanting to share, and asking questions, and sometimes, I don't know, feeding back a little bit at the end that says, so that's been a fairly rubbish 2 weeks, hasn't it? I mean, my son did say some things to me yesterday, which when I really sat with him, and then he told me what was really going on, and I said, wow, I had no idea you were feeling like that, and I'm sorry. I wasn't apologizing, but I kind of empathizing maybe, and saying,
no, I think it's really amazing. Just it's very humble and simple, isn't it? To say, you know what, I had no idea.
Yeah.
And I won't, that's like, I won't know if you don't tell me, sort of thing.
Right.
So yeah, brilliant.
And
well done for sharing.
really, sometimes I'm tired out and don't want to bother.
Of
I
course.
know they need it. I know they need it. I'm not trying to again say I get it right always, but sometimes I know I just need to go visit with one of them. I know I need to, and there's that intuition inside says I just need to somehow sit with them, and I don't want to, but I know the value will be, they'll be better off because they needed their dad to hear them.
Yeah, there's a couple of really good comments here. Kev found that his daughters talk to him better and the boys to the mum, and that's often true. And I found with ours, they're all different, so different. We've got one boy and three girls, and Emily, the first daughter, if I had her in the car for an hour, she would talk for an hour. If it was longer, she would talk for longer. It would just literally fill whatever, and she was a delight because you could just talk about everything, and you didn't have to work at it. She would just like come out, and it was all fascinating. Her heart, her world. Even at the age of 2 or something like that, she would just chatter, and it was fab. Jazzy, time would pass, and you realize, gosh, we've traveled like 20 miles. We haven't said anything, and you look. She's all right. She's happy. She's fine, but now Jazzy's older. She much more chatty and opens her heart up a lot more. And Josh, he went through a big chunk of time not really opening his heart to us at all. And you just thought, man, I hope he's all right, because I've no idea what's going on. And then suddenly now we're boom, and it's like he's 26 or something like that, 27. I should know. Anyway, 20 something. And now he loves to share his heart, and he loves, and just spending time with him is the best fun. But it had not the best out of them all, but it's just so much fun. But we had to wait quite a while to get there. But then as he talks, I realized that all that other stuff was building to this.
Yeah.
So Sam Hepburn says, listening to our children, this seems even more important now with parenting in the digital age and all the distractions. Have you found, Chris and Paul, that you're kind of almost like another voice vying in competition with the voices that they're bombarded with through digital media?
Yeah, that's why you need to start early, isn't it? That's why you need to have the relationship before they get distracted. I think linking to what you and Paul were saying, you need to go on having the inputs even when it doesn't seem to be having any response. As you saw with Josh, it feels like your remarks vanish into space. There's nothing there, but actually everything finds its mark eventually.
Yeah. Sorry.
Cool. Good to have you, Lennis, from Tennessee. We're international today, which is really cool. And feel free to put up a question or a comment or something. Pete says, I don't care what you want to talk about, but I do care that you want to talk, and I want to talk too. Such a difficult thing to get across in a genuine way. Good. Very good. So, Paul, just go on.
I'm still stuck on listening, and I just repeat what you just said, Paul, really well. Several of our kids have hit such rocky times. I'm talking about serious storms, which have made them withdraw from us in a way that really hurt.
As adults, this is
as young adults. I'm talking about crashes of a kind of much more serious kinds. One of which was marital troubles. And what happened to me in one of my kids that I really just very close to right through teenage was he withdrew in the middle of that, and it so hurt me. Everything within me wanted to withdraw from him to pay him back, but I knew early on that if I did that, I'd lose him for a very long time. And I had to rally quite quickly to love him well when he was at his worst and most. It wasn't me was the issue, but he took it out on me, if you like. I guess maybe that happens to dads sometimes and mums. It's not that they're actually really the ones that did wrong, but they're the kind of ones that somehow get the hits. And blame or apparently rejected or withdrawn from. And it really hurt me. And I had to rally enough to say, I've got to try and keep the friendship at least going. Even while the atmosphere is quite difficult and I don't even know what to talk about sometimes, da-di-da-di-da-da. And try and meet up for coffee or a beer or something to keep the link. And it's a little bit superficial, and I've lost the boy I knew, and da-di-da-di-da. That was so hard, but the thing in me was I wanted to withdraw and pay him back. And that's part of, I guess, being a dad again, isn't it? You can't respond on the same level, even whether they're younger or adult. It took a few years actually before we really began to connect again, and now meet up every fortnight and have a wonderful evening. But it was really tough, and I don't know, maybe that's just another angle of what you said, Paul, is loving them well when they're in the worst of storms and actually rejecting you as a sort of what's the word I'm after? Do you understand? It's not because it's you, but they're rejecting you and they don't want you to father them. And the one thing that's painful for a dad is if they don't want you to father them. And you know, you wish you could because you love them well and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
I think that's a big deal. Sticking in with somehow holding the friendship until
Yeah.
the time where they kind of begin to return again, and you haven't lost them badly because you didn't reject them.
That's right. Go on, Chris. You're gonna.
No, I was just agreeing with you. I think
I think we experienced something similar, you know, for those years with Josh, and we had to not burn our bridges, but at the same time not sell out on our values and priorities in the home. So it meant that we somehow, and I'm sure God really helped us, somehow we managed to never get into ultimatum city. Do you know what I mean? Where we've got the OK Corral, and I've got this big gun, I'm going to blow your head off, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I think, looking back, God, I'm sure He helped us, you know, and we didn't have any smart ideas. I think we just kind of held in there, sort of believing that it was going to come through all right.
You were right.
Yeah.
Am I talking too much? I don't want to talk.
No, you're our special guest, Paul. You can talk away.
I didn't know that. This other little thought came to me talking to my granddaughter today, and it always applies. The other thing about fathering, I believe we have an extraordinary capacity to draw out of our kids the substance of dreams that lie within them about and what they're here for. I just think that's one of the joys of fathering, is to discover something of their uniqueness and what what goes on inside that can actually draw it out, and not go with every dream. I'm going to be a pilot. I get that, but there's something about that as a dad that can look at them and not say, don't be so stupid, you need to get a proper job, or you know what, you need to do this. The mystery and joy of a father listening to this ongoing dreaming, I tell you why, because I think one of the things as a father we can do, we can look at our kids and say, you've got what it takes. You've got it. Not because so much undermines that, to them thinking, well, maybe not. There's so many other voices that are so negative, and I'm not talking about being unreal or do you understand? I'm not talking about, I believe in you, you know, you're going to get to the moon. I just mean there's something as you listen to the young heart. I love it with young people anyway. I just fascinated with young people about what's going on. But I think as a dad, to look at them and say it again. Wow, and talk to me about it more. And somehow when it's important to say to them enough, you've got what it takes in life generally. You've got what it takes to be that. If we don't, there's 1,000 negative voices ready to dampen and wee on their fireworks, when it's the father who can call it out and give them some sense of, I believe in you, that you've got what it takes.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's a precious part of fathering, isn't it? I mean,
absolutely. We had, with Emily, she wanted to be a doctor since the year dot. So since she was probably about 9 or 10, and she had a really handsome plastic surgeon operate on her leg after she got it stuck in the back wheel of my bike. My fault. And she just really loved this guy, and he was quite inspirational to her. And I think she, from then on, just knew she wanted to be a doctor. Well, then she needed 3 A's at A level to get into Bristol. And she was really excited, but knew it was a big deal. She had a bit of a crash mentally, emotionally, where she just had been driving herself too hard. And when it came to the actual, she, round about the spring or the winter prior to the exams, she was in quite a poor state, but she pulled it together, and amazing things started to happen. But when it came to the results, she actually got 2 A's and a B. And so I remember we'd been for a little short holiday in France, and we were coming back on the ferry, and of course the world, her world had imploded when she was thinking, I just don't know what to do. And I said, you could be an artist. You've got a lot of other skills in you. What about any of those things? And she said, no, Dad, the only thing I can ever see myself as is a doctor.
Very good.
Said, well, fine. We won't even talk about alternatives then. We'll just do everything we possibly can to make it happen. And I want you to know, Mum and I are right with you. We're going to anything we possibly can do, we'll do as long as it's legal, you know, to help bring that about. And so we look back at that time, that conversation on that ferry as probably the low point, and yet it was almost like the turning point in the movie where the music starts to change. And then and she pulled it out of the bag. She got an A in the next time round, but by then she was accepted in Plymouth. And, you know, she's qualified now. Hurrah. I mean, it's a big, she's still got a load of stuff to do, hadn't she, Chris, to get through the next bit. But it's like this massive goal achieved, you know, but you needed somebody there to say, fine, we're not going to talk about alternatives then. We're just going to, there's plan A, and that's what we're doing.
It extends. I don't know how many listeners here have children with special needs, particular needs, you know. It does extend very much into that realm, doesn't it? Because when they have special needs or particular needs, we've got two, as I said, it's much more challenging not more challenging, it's much more important actually to be able to give that message amidst all the things they can't do or haven't got, to give them the message. You have got it. You've got what it takes to do that, and that's been our own challenge as parents to our two with needs, is that actually to spot that gold and say, you know what, rather than looking at all the things that are difficult, complicated, going wrong, seem impossible even, especially our youngest who's wheelchair bound and all of that, and has got this incredible appetite to launch and initiate things. And sometimes I can look at all.
He plays basketball, Paul, is that right?
Yeah, he plays basketball, but he's just launched a disability sports channel on YouTube. And honestly, I could give you all the complications, difficulties, you know, even things I think, come on, how can you possibly start doing that? And yet, if I don't, as you said, Paul, get in on that beautiful gift that is so good and say, you can do it, I'm with you, rather than look at all the things you haven't done and should have done and could do. And I'm not being a dad in it, and I don't find that easy always, but in the mess, if you can find the gold and blow on that, then the long-term fruit is amazing, isn't it?
Yes. So Pete, let's see Pete's question here for you, because that's a very good one. So fear and shame can destroy the hearts of children more than maybe anything else. What do you do when that plan A never does come true? I mean, that's a profoundly
very good,
important question.
Dad, that shouldn't he?
Yeah, go on, Chris. What do you do when plan A doesn't materialize, even though you've championed it? And
I think the most important thing is that love is unconditional, and the kid gets that. As my own experience was that I was a kid who went to boarding school. I didn't feel my parents were particularly close. I didn't really have any clear idea how much they loved me till I failed my A levels.
Right.
And suddenly, the way the relationship ran, I got a lot of praise for achievements, and so I sort of just assumed that if I ploughed it, there would be no love. You know, the love was conditional. I only really found out that love for me was unconditional when I really ploughed it. Wow. And the message I got was, "We still believe in you."
Love it.
And my dad said, "You know, as long as you go on in education, I'll go on supporting you."
Wow.
That's
profound, isn't it?
Yeah, it changed our relationship. My dad subsequently became a Christian, and the relationship was enormously better towards the end of his life than it had been at the beginning of time.
Oh, very good.
So that was one of the major turning points.
Yeah. One of the things we were really keen to say to Emily all the way through was, listen, darling, don't do it for us. You're not. Don't think that somehow we're going to be. It's going to make us more proud or more loving of you if you achieve this goal. We love you now as much as it's possible to love a human being. We love you now, and we're proud of you now. Do you know what I mean? And so we were keen to sort of remove any of that kind of implied pressure to sort of live out your parents' dreams vicariously and all that. And yeah,
keeping the channels open, keeping the face-to-face. And I remember one of my theories of parenting comes from a BBC program I heard about the Calgary, the thing called the Calgary Stampede, where they have this rodeo. And they had the champion rodeo rider on this program, and the girl was interviewing him said, "So what's the secret of winning at the rodeo?" He said, "Stay on the horse." Stay on the horse. You know, things bucking and kicking and spitting and rolling over to try and get you off. You stay on the horse. That's
very good.
That's all you need to know about parenting adolescents, really.
Parenting adolescents. So go on then, Paul. Just talk just a little bit when your adolescents are becoming young men or young women, maybe with the additional complication of special needs. How does that even work?
Good question. From my memory, which seems a long time ago now, I guess it was two or three things come to mind, and you guys add in more. I think firstly, understanding the relationship was changing, and therefore our role was different to had been in the past. It was less, they weren't so dependent on us, and they were beginning to flex their muscles, leave home, go on adventures, and that changed the nature of the relationship. That I think we had the first time around, we didn't do it very well, and needed to adjust to that. The young man or the young woman is ready to roll, and I'm not sure they are ready to roll, and they are. That was adjustment. I think one of the key things we decided was keeping the friendship solid throughout all the changes. It's been a big deal in our whole journey with our kids, is keep the friendship solid, keep it. And we talked about that tonight, I know. And the other thing I think we've alluded to already was ours kept changing their minds about what they wanted to do, or what education they wanted, or where they were going to go, or what was going to happen, and whether they're going to take a gap year, or whether. When I grew up as a kid, it was like one way only. This is how you're going, and that's it. You do this, and you do that, and you do that, and get a job, and get married, and these kids our kids were all over the place with different things going on, and it tested me because I wanted to settle it down so it looked good and clear to me. And I think I had to realize, what, again, as somebody said, Paul, you said it, I cannot mold you into my expectation. I need to back you as you flex your wings now and figure who you really are. And even concerning faith and whether they were going to continue in their faith, and they were questions coming up. And that tested me because, as for me in my house, we will serve the Lord. It was like, wait a minute. So I think for me anyway, changing the whole relationship to a maturer one and letting them go and trusting them and trusting that they were quite ready to. It took me time to get the hang of. And I'll say it again because the question was so good. Failure is a very dubious word. So the issues of shame when it goes wrong, or fear when it goes wrong, I think again our capacity to get even in that young adulthood to get in there and say, come on, let's just see how you can get up and get going again. Again, that's a thing we can do if we're in there with them, isn't it? Say, come, we've had one of our kids lost everything about 8 years ago, everything, devastated, broken, finished, and it's taken some years to rebuild, but that's again, I think our part is to keep believing, and I think late teenage is it's quite a time of change.
Chris, talk to us about that whole teenage adolescent thing with, you know, the conversations you have to have and holding things steady and kind of being a peacemaker in the home or whatever. You must have the scars to.
Got a few, yeah. I think as with all this, the earlier you start, the better it goes. And obviously, with foster children, they come in with a whole set of pre-programs you know nothing about. But with your own children, you establish a relationship and you're walking with them. And it's I'm losing my way here.
So yeah,
The question.
you've already built something into your own children, which when you have a foster child, you're starting from scratch, and they might be quite well established in a pattern that is, you know, kind of nothing like your, you know, what you would consider one of your values.
Yeah, I think it's about relationship ultimately, and relationship has to be the priority.
Yeah.
With a newcomer kid in their teenage years, you really can't start with quite well. Obviously, as Paul said, there are some rules. You know, when your behaviour starts to affect the family, there have to be limits. But the main thing is establishing the relationship and developing it, and what comes out of that is you start to be able to speak into the child what they're going to be. You demonstrated that very well with Emily because you could see it, and I could see it as well when she was young. That there was that in her that was going to, you know, that being a doctor was sort of in her DNA somehow.
Yeah.
Just one quick thing on, since we're talking about being a dad. I guess in all the different seasons from toddler up to leaving home, every child always needs their dad there in some way or other, even if it doesn't appear like they do. And some of the seasons that change in teenage, and I guess I'm just rooting back to the fact, you know, being a dad is a permanent, it's a permanent call.
Permanent post.
Yeah, you're in there, and in the teenage, and you know, we found even talking about sex or talking about faith, or sometimes it was really good and easy, sometimes it was awful, and I think it's just, but they need you as a dad nevertheless to be rock solid there, even if they appear not to, and even if they're going off and exploring it a bit in a way you don't like very much, or watching films or whatever it is, you know, and actually experimenting with their independence. I think that's where it gets like, how am I meant to be now? And sometimes I even ask my kids, you know what, how do you want me to be a dad to you at this time? Now, I'm not asking them to give me an opinion, you know, that says, I'd like you to buy me stuff every week. I don't mean that. I just mean, let's talk about it so that,
how can I best help you?
Yeah, what's your expectation? Because now you're becoming an adult. I need to know what you're expecting.
Yeah.
Then at least we're on some conversational deal about that. Otherwise, I'm expecting it always because it isn't. They're leaving, they're independent, or they're growing up, or they've suddenly had their first relationship, and you know, they didn't tell me about it. Or so I think there's so many adjustments in that age, and even, you know, are they going to stay at school, or are they going to leave school and do some whatever? I just think all I'm saying is dad's permanent on duty.
Yeah.
Whether it's easy or not in those periods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. Pete, good comment from Pete there. Took him two long years between the time I realized my dad was genuinely prepared to always be my friend no matter what, and the time when I actually started being a better man. For many, it's even longer, but surely there is no shortcut. That's profound, Pete. And well done, Chris. And Lennis says, I bet we get to learn one or two things about shame throughout the process of raising our teens. We discover God's grace in fresh ways. One of the biggest joys, I think, for me about having children at all is simply the friendship that
Yeah.
they bring into my life. And as they've progressed through teens into young adulthood, that friendship is just so precious. And,
Yeah.
you know, they've become, you know, among my closest friends. And, you know, even things that I thought I'd perhaps never be able to share, I've been able to share with them. And just really, it has been remarkable. And I think one of the really good things, I don't know if you guys have found that, is where you're able to, where they actually help you in some way, and you're able to be the recipient and able to thank them and acknowledge that they're actually now making a massive contribution to even your own heart, not just perhaps a practical job that needs a couple more pairs of hands, but they're actually putting something back into the old boy, you know.
Yeah, I'm in on that one, Paul, and I'm going to say that part of the key for me was actually learning to, how can I put this, to sort of step out of my I'm used to being a dad, I'm used to taking responsibility, I'm used to handling the ship, taking the lead, looking after everything, kind of coming out of that and being vulnerable with my adult kids, and more vulnerable, not in some, you know, wrong way, but I think it elicited from them, one of my kids particularly, I began to open up to him some really, really profound things in my journey, and he came through with some wisdom.
Wow.
That so surprised me that I thought I've now tapped into a dimension of the relationship I hadn't been in before, because I was always trying to father him. Did you understand?
Amazing.
And it wasn't I was trying to father, that's how it had been.
Yeah.
But we went really vulnerable for some weeks because I felt I needed to. And then he began to ask some questions. And I thought, either I tell him the truth, or I give him the kind of thus far and no further, don't forget I'm dad.
Yeah.
And in doing that, it brought stuff out of him. Honestly, I thought, man, you've got riches. And it just changed the relationship. I'm still dad, but it changed the relationship to what you described. And I so value it in my kids. Yes. I actually think it's some of the pleasure and reward of sticking in with the game of being a dad.
Excellent. So, just one last question. Zach has said, isn't there, or aren't there limits on experiencing their independence as they grow up? And so, should we put some kind of fence around the extent to which we let a young person explore their independence?
Oh yeah,
We should.
there has to be. That's our job as parents, isn't it? I remember someone describing parenting as being a dance where the parent is dancing backwards and the child is dancing forwards, and you're holding hands, and the speed the child can go forwards is the speed that you're prepared to go backwards. And obviously, you know, you've got a 7-year-old, they can't decide to stay out all night, they'll go drinking with their friends and stuff like that. But there comes a point in the relationship when you trust them to say, yes, you go out and you set your own limits and come back when you get them to commit to a limit, but let them set it themselves.
Yeah.
That's good.
It's about safety, and it's about what's age appropriate.
Yes. Age is a massive one, and you're looking at the stage of development of that child, aren't you? And whether they're aware of risks, and how have they got their head screwed on, and they'll do the thing. Well, you let so and so do it, won't they? They'll try that one, but we have to still be able to kind of release them gently into the wild without having properly schooled them as much as we possibly can, and giving them a foundation where they know who they are.
Yeah.
Guys, it's been a blast. Paul and Chris, thank you so much for coming on the show. Listen to me. I think for now we're going to park this Being a Dad series. It's been great. Love to hear any thoughts you've had on it, and whether you'd like to do a series 3 at some point. But a massive thanks to Chris for helping me host it, and all your great wisdom. And Paul, thanks for coming in, and thank you
Great
to
pleasure.
everyone for watching.
Great pleasure.
God bless you.
I didn't get that.
Big time.
Could you try again?
Siri wants to join in.